Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight video on a fragrance from the house of Prin. Prin Lomros is the perfumer. The house is named Prin, or Prin Parfums, if you will. And there's a couple houses that fall under his purview. We've got Prin, we've got Parfum Prissanas, we've got Strangers Perfumery. I mean, it just goes on and on. And you guys know that if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that this is a hobby for me. This channel and following my thoughts and putting them up on YouTube like this is really for FragCom. You know, I don't do this as a money maker. The little bit I make on ads every month is a joke, basically. And so if I was focusing on clicks and views and all that stuff, these type of reviews would never get put up because I know this is not going to generate the clicks. I know the House of Prin is not going to bring the clicks. He's going to bring the hardcore frag heads. And I know that the hardcore frag heads and the real ones will find my channel from the videos that I do. I don't need to do a top 10 panty dropper list, although I will say that somebody brought up a very good point. They said, Ramsey, you've taken all of this time and sort of, built out this Rolodex of ingredients, and you can search all of the different this is not a top 10 this year in perfume, and there's this depth where it goes really deep, but we really don't have too much about your all-time favorites. So they were like, you should do some top 10s or whatever it is, so we can see the breadth of how deep it all goes, but also we can kind of get a feel for your all-time favorites. So maybe one day I will pivot and go the other way and start making a couple of those videos, but this is not one such video. This is a video that's going to be probably for the hardcore frag heads only, because today we're going to talk about a Prin fragrance, and it came out in 2023, and it's called Nilubol. Nilubol is how I'm going to pretend I know how to pronounce that. Nilubol is a Thai word, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, but Parfumo calls this an animalic floral. It was released in 2023, and the notes are birch tar, chamomile, cumin, galbanum, hops, Liatris spicata, Malayan oud, patchouli, Thai oud, yuzu, ambrette seed, bergamot, blackcurrant bud absolute, blue lotus absolute, carnation, champaka leaf, civet, heliotrope, jasmine absolute, lilac, orris butter, osmanthus absolute, provincial lavender absolute, tomato leaf, violet leaf absolute, and peach. That is the note listing. And I have a 3-hour dry down, 3.5, 4-hour dry down here. And I'm going to do a fresh application because I am a glutton for punishment. So let's put a good old bunch here. So whoever my perfume god person was who sent this to me, somebody sent this to me long ago. Well, it had to be within the last year or so. Thank you very much, because it allows me to do these type of videos. So, my God, the opening is just absolutely horrendous. So, if you've been following my channel, and I've done quite a lot of work with the House of Prin, you can go check out reviews from things like Thichila, Onthamara, Haxan, Mogao. I mean, the list goes on and on. I've done a lot of work with the house. Now, I feel like Prin is a avid releaser of fragrances. He puts stuff out very quickly. And some say he doesn't take enough time on his releases. They just throw stuff out there and see what sticks. And if it doesn't, he just discontinues it. He also has this terrible habit of going from a fragrance name, changing the name, or maybe going from one brand to another of his brands and flipping the name, but keeping the fragrance. And so hardcore Prin addicts will know exactly what I mean. I am... I'm sort of lukewarm on the house because there's a couple things I smelled that I really liked. Mogao was probably one of my favorite from the house. And often when I talk about the House of Prin, I mention that there's kind of two camps that I think his fragrances fall into. One, I feel like he kind of puts a lot of work into the fragrance and makes this artistic vision, and you can see the detail and the work and the effort, or at least it feels that way to me when I smell the fragrance, okay? And the second type, it just feels like he tries to almost like shock you with these hardcore animalics. And the joke I made before is that a lot of the hardcore frag heads smell this and they're like, oh, it smells like shit. Bravo. Congratulations. You've done an amazing artistic endeavor for all of mankind, Prin. And I kind of fall into this camp where, and if you know me, you know I have a heavy tolerance for animalics. Heavy, okay? I'm probably in the 0.1% of frag heads who can tolerate animalic ingredients. And Prin stuff is just beyond the pale. It is beyond the pale of human comprehension for me. It is, it's so, some of his stuff is just disgusting. I mean, if you have seen some of my previous descriptions on Prin fragrances, some of the things I mentioned was a toddler reaches into your cat's litter box, grabs a hard turd from Fluffy, and chunks it into the soup that your wife is making with just way too much spice in the soup. Just chunks the cat turd in there, and your wife kind of looks at it and she's like, and keeps on cooking, right? That's one description from a previous Prin review. Another is you have multiple dogs, let's say, and one dog who is old and senile, or maybe not, maybe he just likes the smell of poop or to eat poop, follows after the other dog, literally eats the poop, not straight out of the other dog's ass, but lets it harden a little bit, chews on it, and then comes in and tries to lick your face. So you have old, rotten teeth dog breath with poop, okay? That's the second description of another Prin fragrance. This opening does all of that, okay? It kind of encompasses all of the most disgusting parts of Prin's animalic sort of madness. He's like a mad scientist, I think. It just feels like he just throws stuff together. Now, to be fair, it does feel like he has a DNA. Like the more Prins that I smell, the more I can kind of segment them into these different buckets, if you will. I really liked, like I said, Mogao. I think that was the one that was his sort of very artistic Chypre, if you will. And that used animalics, but in a very toned down manner, okay? I really liked Thichila. That was his Thai oud, his take on this very rubbery, balloon-like Thai oud. But the ones that are just these hardcore animalic challenging bits, I really, really struggled with. I think my favorite of all of the hardcore animalic fragrances I smelled from him was Varuek, which there is a review on the channel if you'd like to check that out. There's also a Prin playlist if you really want to get into the weeds and hear all of my Prin reviews, or if you just think my descriptions are hilarious and you want to hear some of the other ones from the house. There is a Prin playlist if you want to kind of watch back-to-back Prin reviews popping off all at once. But this kind of takes the worst aspects of all of that, makes it slightly smoky in the opening because there is a little bit of this weird smokiness, if you will. There's a ton of spice in here, just an absolute metric ton of cumin and, you know, I don't know what other spices, but it just smells like this exotic spice bazaar. Like you took allspice, 7-spice, all the different Thai spices, cumin, nutmeg, you know, any cinnamon, any spice you can imagine, and just kind of threw it into the pot. Again, think of Prin as a mad scientist on these type of fragrances, okay? And then just imagine you're adding this sort of halo of green. So if you paid attention while I read off that insane note listing, you would have picked up things like galbanum. You would have picked up, for example, hops, if you will. And you would have picked up tomato leaf, or tomato leaf, if you want me to talk regular, and violet leaf absolute. So these are all green, and there's blackcurrant bud absolute, which is sort of a pissy green-like smell, like a sour, pissy green smell. The leaf, the blackcurrant buds in particular, I think are usually or maybe it could be a bit of the leaves, a bit of the buds, but there's definitely that bitter, sour green aspect in here. And of course, patchouli can be earthy green as well. So this fragrance basically smells animalic and earthy and spicy and slightly smoky, just a little bit of smoke. If you know kind of that mad scientist, throw shit against the wall feeling of Prin that I try to describe, just imagine kind of all of that hitting your nose at once if you've never smelled it, and then take whatever civet animalic note you can imagine in your brain and amp it up by 100. And that's probably the opening, okay? It's one of the most disgusting openings. I just cannot stand the way Prin does animalics. I just can't. I don't know what it is about his use of animalics, but it really usually puts me off. And this really puts me off. I am not happy with this opening, okay? And if you watched my review from yesterday, which I understand not a lot of people did, it's a up-and-coming house, a newer, you know, I don't even know what you would call it, artisanal house maybe. And the name of the house was called D. Grey, and the fragrance I reviewed yesterday was called Jade Phoenix. Well, Jade Phoenix had this mentholated, almost like salon pass, sort of you know, think of like menthol rubs for old people. Or if you have like a back injury or something, you stick a Salonpas on there and it has that menthol meets, you know, this medicinal like smell, if you will. Menthol meets lidocaine, okay? And that's the kind of the opening. But it had this green aura like effect. And we're kind of batting 2 for 2 here, back to back days, because Nilubol basically does something very similar. So imagine this green effect, but executed in a little different fashion. But just imagine the slight medicinal. It's not as medicinal. It's not as medicinal or mentholated as Jade Phoenix is. In fact, I would wear Jade Phoenix 100 times out of 100 over this, in my opinion. Give me Jade Phoenix any day of the week. And so this smells less mentholated, but it still has a slightly green tint. And of all of the animalic Prin fragrances that I've smelled, I think this takes that green tint and amps it up a little bit. At least to my nose, it does. Okay, so there's this weird green tint that plays a big part of the opening. And I think, like I mentioned, the hops, the blackcurrant bud, absolute, the tomato leaf, and violet leaf and all that stuff give that green feel, along with, of course, the sticky, resinous galbanum, if you will, right? And so, you know, there's also this strange smell of decay in the opening to me. So imagine maybe like a small rodent or bird or something passed away. Like there was a funeral held for the small bird. It passed away. It went on to the other realm. No, the bird died, and it's sitting in this fern-like leafy outside area. And all of the vultures, or let's say cleanup crew, the parasites, the scavengers who would usually take care of that, looked at the bird and they were like, "It's not worth our time. You know, the bird is just, you know, it's just scrawny. There's no meat on it. We're just going to leave it alone." You know, no one wants to mess with said bird, okay? So the bird is just kind of slowly decaying. And if you've ever had like a small animal decay, if you live in Texas and you had ever had like a mouse or a rat or something die in your walls in the middle of summer, oh my God, it is, you wonder how can something so small smell so absolutely awful for so long. If you can't get to it, if they die in the walls, that's why I hate putting down poison, because they'll eat it, die in the walls, and they just stink to high heaven, especially in the heat. So just imagine a little bit of that weird smell of decay. And again, if you're a Texan and that's ever happened to you, you know exactly what I mean. If you're from a hot climate, you probably know exactly what I mean. So if you're wondering who in the world would want to smell like this, well, I mean, it is an artistic fragrance. You have to give them that, okay? Apparently, there is some yuzu in the top, giving a little bit of that sort of bitter, very focused, bitter, citric aspect. And maybe if I really stretch my brain, I could see a yuzu note for all of half a second before all of these animalic notes kind of take over. And so that's really the first 30 to 60 minutes. Okay, so just imagine this is kind of the opening that I'm trying to describe. Okay, and one thing I will say is after the hour mark, it does start to tone down. Hour 1 to hour 2 are better. Hour 2 to hour 3 are better. And it slightly begins to turn into kind of what the brand says this is, which the brand actually calls this an animalic floral. So if you go to my good friend Lee from Fragnanimus, who I've done, if you go watch my review of Onthamara, that's a sample from Lee from Fragnanimus. I gave him shout outs many a different times. He's where I pretty much bought all of my Bortnikovs from. And his website is fragnanimus.com. He has one bottle of Nilubol left, and it's usually $380. It's marked down to $285. So act now, or forever hold your breath. 25% off. Act now. Don't let future regret play a role. But here's what the brand says. The brand says that Nilubol is an exquisite fragrance inspired by the enchanting beauty of the blue water lily, known as the Nilubol in Thai. Like the ephemeral blossoms that bloom under the shimmering purple moonlight, this perfume captures the essence of a mystical and captivating experience. It goes on to say that the blue water lily scientifically known as Nymphaea nuchali, is a beautiful aquatic flower that is native to various regions in Asia, including Thailand. This flower holds cultural significance and is admired for its stunning appearance and enchanting fragrance. The blue water lily is known for its vibrant blue petals, which can range from pale sky blue to deep indigo. The petals are delicate and often have a waxy texture, adding to their allure. The flower blooms on the surface of still or slow-moving bodies of water such as ponds, lakes, or marshes. Now, I have to say, lilies are absolutely beautiful, especially water lilies. Have you ever seen pictures of water lilies and just how deep they go down to reach the bottom of the lake, or, like I said, slow moving water, whatever it is? It is absolutely gorgeous. It's a beautiful image. And if you read that and then smell this, you'll think you're smelling the wrong fragrance. I mean, you'll literally think that they gave you the wrong sample, which, knowing Prin as I know him, I know that's not the case. I know this is actually the correct sample. But if you're new to Prin, like if this is your first Prin, God help you. But if this is your first Prin, I will tell you that this is the correct fragrance. It's just you have to wait 2 or 3 hours for that floral heart, if you will. And by the way, Prin, for those of you who don't know, he doesn't really do triangles, note triangles. There's no top, heart, and base most of the time. It's just, here's all of the notes. And honestly, that's how a lot of it smells. It smells like he's just kind of throwing stuff in there, and whatever hits you at the time. But technically, I would guess that this has a floral heart to some aspect. So again, the name means this aquatic green blue water lily, and supposedly this is supposed to be famous for blooming or blossoming at night when the moon is the fullest. Okay, so now there are other florals used in here as well, and like I said, this is literally described as a floral fragrance, although you really have to wait to get that floral hit. But apparently there's jasmine, there's osmanthus, there's that blue lotus absolute, which is actually a pretty expensive note from my understanding. And I think that's also supposed to have this tasteless, waxy, frangipani-like smell. I don't know. Blue lotus apparently is a very rare and expensive ingredient as well. But also he mentions that there's a combination of rare Thai plants and flowers into this mix. He loves adding stuff from Thailand, okay? And maybe that's one of the reasons why his creation seems so strange to me, is all of these rare and exotic flowers and stuff like that. Sometimes they just don't jive with my nose. It smells like you're just literally smelling a mess. I mean, like you're just smelling someone who took 10 minutes, took a bunch of oils, put them all together, and was like, fuck it, let's go to the bar. Let's sell them this shit. They'll buy anything. It just feels like everything was just kind of thrown together. And the lily in this fragrance gets its name. So you really have to kind of wait, like I said, until the heart to smell the namesake of the fragrance. And then even when you do smell it, you're expecting this sort of vibrant, right, bright, fresh lily, beautiful lily, which lily is absolutely beautiful in smell. Absolutely gorgeous when it's done correctly. This fresh floral-like smell, vibrant and bright and just stunning. It's floral, right? And in my mind, I guess, so here's the dry down. And I guess I could make the case that yes, within this dry down, in the heart, there is a beautiful water lily-like smell, okay? Is it aquatic? No. No, I don't get much aquatic features, but that's a good thing. Most people don't, most frag heads don't want the aquatic side of things, okay? But lilies are supposed to represent like rebirth and this enlightenment of self, if you will, and of yourself and of your mind, okay? They're a beautiful flower, and I wish, honestly, if that's really what he was going for, that they allowed the flower to shine more. I just feel like there's all this clutter around it, you know what I mean? Like your nose just can't focus on, if your fragrance is going to be called Nilubol, and then you tell people that is the Thai word for this beautiful blue water lily, you damn well better be able to smell a beautiful blue water lily. Unfortunately, I mean, like I said, if you're patient and you wait in the heart, you can pick it up for a little while. But the thing is it isn't allowed to shine, is where I'm going with this. It feels like that opening, that animalic, challenging opening, which I was describing, reverberates throughout the fragrance. So even into the dry down, as it settles down a little bit, you still get hints of what make it so disgusting to me. And um, I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan of the animalics that Prin does. His animalic notes feel so stifling to me. They feel, like if you're trying, like I'll use the analogy that they were using with the moon, right? So imagine you're trying to see this beautiful water lily in the dark, but all you have is the reflection of the moon and the reflection from the water. So it's like you're seeing a reflection of a reflection, okay? You're not getting the light of the sun. You're not seeing it straight on. You're seeing a reflection in the water. And it's almost like you're in a fun house. Like there's a mirror here, there's a mirror here, and everything you're seeing is, are you actually seeing it? Is it something else? Is it, everything is a it just feels like everything is a game and everything is stretched out or pushed too crumped together, too thin, too it doesn't have enough kind of depth where you need it. The animalics are overdone, and it's almost like you just can't get a proper glimpse of that beautiful, elusive flower, if that makes sense. So I will say, again, because I do want to be Switzerland and I want to be completely fair in this whole reviewing process, even though part of it is telling my opinion and my 2 cents, and someone else may smell this and say it's a masterpiece, okay? That is your right. But you know what? When you're a reviewer, if you will, and I don't even really consider myself a reviewer, I just consider myself like a guy who loves perfume that turns on the camera and just rambles, okay? I'm Ramsey the Rambler. And so I ramble about my thoughts and turn off the camera and move on to the next video, right? But so I can be completely fair. I will say that once you get into the dry down, I do think that the oud in this, and if you're not an oud head, like I've completely turned into an oud head over the last couple of years, but if you're not an oud head, you may disagree with this statement, but I think that the oud into the dry down kind of saves it from itself, if you will. So the Malaysian oud or Malayan oud and the Thai oud, which the Thai oud usually gives off slightly fruitier aspects. It's not the big animalic Indian ouds. Thai oud can sometimes feel like fruits. Or so, for example, there is a fruity side to this fragrance, and I think that's probably the Thai oud, and I like that part of it. So it's like a fruity, slightly animalic oud, and it saves the fragrance into the dry down. So the dry down gets better, and every time I've worn it, I've given this 3 wears, and as you can see, there is a little bit of a dent in this little bad boy. So I've given this 3 wears to bed, which is probably way more than it deserves, to be honest. Every time I wear this, it gets better, okay? And I think if I wasn't already attuned to Prin's way of doing animalics, I would be completely disgusted. And I wouldn't have been able to wait long enough to appreciate. I probably just would have wrote the most disgusting thing I've ever smelled. And if you've ever watched my review of Onthamara, go check it out if you want to laugh. But I do appreciate it more and more each time I try it. That being said, waiting 3 to 4 hours and saying, well, I don't necessarily hate it now as much as I hated it 3 or 4 hours ago is not necessarily a winning strategy. But then again, on the other hand, because I want to be objective and fair, the modern perfume world, which is constantly putting out clones and copies and, doing the same thing in a different bottle, this, cooking the same soup, maybe just serving it in a different bowl to you over and over and over again, constantly marking up the prices and all that stuff, okay? I do have to at least give Prin credit for doing something different. I mean, if it wasn't for all the other Prins that I smelled that hint towards this, okay, they're all slightly different, but he definitely has a DNA. When he goes for the shock value animalic fragrances, he definitely has, a fingerprint. Okay, there's no doubt about it. And so if it hadn't been for Haxan and Onthamara and Varuek and all that stuff, there would be no way that I would say I've ever smelled anything that smells like this. But because I've smelled some of his other work, I could say, okay, this at least shares some similarities with other Prin fragrances, but outside of Prin, there is nothing even remotely close to this. This is just I mean, if you just want to smell something like you've never smelled, check out some of these Prins. So to the hardcore frag heads, check some of these out. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts if you are a hardcore frag head and you've tested some of these Prins. Let me know what your thoughts are. I believe this is still available. Who knows? I mean, they come in 30 ml bottles and they're usually $380, which is a lot of money. But again, Fragnanimous has one bottle left at $285. But other than that one person, which if this sells that bottle, I'll be absolutely shocked if this review sells it. Although maybe just out of curiosity, somebody will be like, I got to see what the hell this smells like. But yes, Nilubol by Prin. Let me know if you have any experience with the house or with this particular fragrance. So as always, I appreciate you guys watching, commenting, liking, subscribing. All that stuff definitely helps the channel. Thumbs up on the videos help the recommendation, I guess, in the algorithm. I don't understand how it all works. I have no clue, but I do know that on Saturday, May the 11th, which is only in a couple days, we will have Prakar Gupta from Sherwood Parfums on the channel at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. So if you can join live, I would love it if you guys came armed with some questions and be there to kind of enjoy the interview and get to know him a little bit deeper in his work and his journey and all that stuff. So appreciate everyone watching. Hope you can make the live in a couple days. Cheers, guys, and have a great night. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.